With DCBTO2 have officially released in Japan, it is safe to say that finally we got a chance to see a certain right line that has been kind of holded off by Bushiroad for a longest time before they decided to reveal a few days before the actual release of the booster.
Why are you like this?
And that is of course Liael Amorta.
It's about damn time!
But the biggest plot twist here is not how she was depicted and shown in the show, and of course the user, is because of her lore, she is technically from Gear Chronicle, aka Dark States. So I'm really excited to see what she actually does, and surprisingly enough, she is actually pretty fun to play. But how good she actually is, that is exactly what I'm going to be talking about today. So let's start off with the right line, and it's a little unfortunate because the right line is not Angel Feather mixed with Gear Chronicle throughout the whole right line, just Liael has that Gear Chronicle element. But what is not underwhelming is definitely the right line effect. As I personally feel, this is by far one of the best generic right line Keter has received, and that is due to the great run of this deck, player of the lovely half Adolphus. Adolphus has only one skill where when rolled upon by player of beautiful court Elegenia, aka the grade 2, so last one draw 2 cards, choose up to 1 normal unit from your hand, discard it, and if you did not discard a normal unit, you have to discard 2 cards instead. This is a really good effect. So good in fact that I feel some of the Keter deck will actually opt to play for Liael right line just for the draw 2, because the discard one is barely a detriment. And there's nothing much else to say, it is essentially a much better version of Ranker Chain, even if it is tied to another unit in the right line. And that unit is of course Elegenia, who despite not being a generic, she does has a really good skill for Liael, as when rolled upon by Liael, choose any number of normal unit from your draw, put them to the bottom of your deck in any order, and if you choose 3 or more cards, draw a card.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Do you notice something interesting with this particular card? You can bot as many as you wish so. So this means that if you manage to discard a lot of normal unit during the earlier part of the game, you can actually put all of them back to deck, recycle back all of your discard cycle, like Biscotti for example, for them to actually be reused later on in the game, especially for the fact that you can use Biscotti to at least guarantee a trigger. So yeah, this card has a lot of layers despite the fact that it is one simple skill. But in my honest opinion, the biggest draw for this particular skill is for Liael herself, because she needs a lot of normal unit in the deck. And I think that's a good segue to talk about the Fated of Time Liael herself. This unit, interestingly enough, has 3 skills, but I will talk about the hidden skill afterwards. For now, let's talk about what we have known so far from the anime. As when this unit attack, counterblast 1, choose one of your rare cards, bind it, search it for up to 1 card with the same name as that card, call it to rare card circle, and shuffle your deck. This is really good, as this allows you to essentially just reuse some of the rare card that most probably you want to reuse it for the turn with things like Suggest or Buckney. But the problem with this particular skill is also the fact that after a while you will run out of bullets, because most of your rare card will be in the bind zone. But the deck technically has a solution. But before that, let's talk about the divine skill first. Divine skill. At the end of battle this unit attack, if your opponent Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, choose a card with the same name as this unit from your drop, write it as stand. If you wrote, that unit get drive mana fund until end of turn. I can safely say this is not the strongest divine skill to have around, but it is a really good one nonetheless, because of the fact that this allows you to reuse her first effect once again, just like how she allows you to reuse Suggest effect by her skill. But of course there is a little bit of problem here, and that is the fact that the deck power is not very good. In fact, almost all of her attack, if not for the rear guard, most of them would be under 30k, because of the fact that she doesn't give power to anything. So this means that you really have to rely on cards like Suggest, Buckney, or some of her support to actually get the missing power. This is not really a good thing, especially you considering Daifudal does more or less the same level of tanking, but does have a bit more firepower behind that deck. However, there is a reason for that, and that lies in the hidden second skill that wasn't revealed on the show yet. And that is when this unit is put on guard circle, discard a card from your hand and put 2 cards from the bind zone to the bottom of your deck in any order. Choose one of your unit with Fated 1 in the name. It cannot be hit by the end of that battle. So yes, this takes note from the Aeon Dragon, I think, from the Genesis, and turned herself into a specific PG for the Fated One. Unfortunately, we can only run this in the Keter Sanctuary, of course, so that means there's only 2 Fated One at the moment. But in the long run, this card will definitely has a value rose the more Fated One released into the card pool. And this also fixed the issue of the first skill where you don't have enough bullet to use for the skill, as you can return the card that was bind by her own effect back to deck to be prepared for a PG. And I'll be honest, this skill kind of shows the way that Suo most likely gonna lose in the next few episodes because of this particular skill. To put it simply, the deck has a strong resource and defense capability, but definitely heavily lacking in power, as she really relied on her support to actually carry through her deck in general. And we can start off with a divine skill booster that every single divine skill deck did get. Yes, they eventually released the Soga one afterwards. As we have Magic of Stimulant Euphoria has the same first skill as every other divine skill booster, but a very powerful second skill where when this unit boosts a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Liael in its name, this unit gets 2k until end of that battle. Do note, the 2k doesn't has a cost, but you can Soul Blast one to choose up to one card with the same name as any other unit on your drop and put it in the bottom of the deck. You choose one of your unit plus 5k until end of turn. This doesn't make a lot of much power, but the fact that it can be given to any unit on the field is actually quite flexible, considering the fact that a lot of units in this deck technically do a rewrite rather than a restand. And this is also another card that can help you to aid in actually recycle your bullet, so this is always greatly appreciated, even if most of the time you're gonna be using her to boost first if you're going into the divine skill turn. Then secondly, we have the triple R of the booster for her, Sustained of Itinerant Idiras. Idiras can gain 10k on his own if another copy of himself is in the bind zone. Nothing too crazy here, but a little bit slow in my opinion, because this one came to online until Liael skill has been activated at least once. But the second skill is not bad for survivability, as when bound from Vanguard circle during your turn, if you have Liael Vanguard, so plus 1, draw a card, choose one of your Vanguard and that unit get 5k until end of turn. The power increment is nice, though I wish it could be done a little bit more. I understand that this is a tank deck and they try to kind of balance it out, but this also means that they really have to make sure that the next support for Liael needs to be really good to actually push her up in terms of playability in competition. And technically last support that is specifically for her is Salva Dragon. During your turn, if your bind zone has a card with the same name as any other unit on your field, this gets 10k, essentially an upgraded version of Idiras, but doesn't have as much of a use. It is a nice to have because it is a permanent 23k during your turn, but personally for me, I either run this or Bugme, in which both does have a similar job to each other.
My son is a basic bitch.
And last but not least, this is technically a support for Fated One in Keters, and that is Gragon. Gragon is technically an 8k vanilla until a card was placed by ability of your Vanguard with a divine skill this turn, as he turned himself into a 13k booster that can actually countercharge after boost.
Understandable, have a nice day!
So overall, I have to say the support lying around Liael is actually pretty solid resource wise, but in terms of offense, it's definitely a little lacking. And that is a good segue to talk about the good and the bad of this deck. And the best part of this deck is essentially the resourcefulness that the deck can bring, on top of how well the deck can actually tank, thanks to Liael treating herself as a PG that technically bypass everything including Langmire Guard Restrict. And in terms of deck filterability, I think the deck is decent because most of the returning effect for this deck is actually a deck bot thing, so that means that you most likely won't be sabotaging your drive check anytime soon. But that is all the good point about the deck, because the deck technically has a power issue, and this is easily one of the lowest I have seen ever since like what, Lufa. And not only that, the deck also kind of rely on having that attacker to be in your hand to begin with to actually start the loop properly. Of course, being a Keter Sanctuary, you have a few more ways to actually search it out, but because of how weak the attack is, that means that you do have to run quite a substantial amount of attacker in this deck to make up for the lack of offense. And last but not least, and this is kind of pertain to which build you're trying to go for, it can be bricky because some of the best attacker are usually grade 3, and that's Liael Amorta, a right line that actually make me excited to go back and play Kita again because it's actually quite fun to play, even if it is not good right now. But we are seeing some of a great support coming for the deck very soon, so I think the deck will definitely get some strong support in the upcoming festival collection and a promo pack for May and June. I mean, Black Mail is already got his after 1 month of the release, so yeah. But what do you guys think? Do leave down in the comments below on what you guys think, and yeah, that's all I have for today. Take care of yourself, and this is Mac Megane signing out.